All right, welcome to Python My Way. We're going to be talking about installing Python for your local dev setup, and we're going to be using a tool called Conda, specifically Miniconda. So we have 4 steps here to get this running. We're going to be using Windows and PowerShell terminal, and so these steps might differ a little bit. If you're more experienced with the terminal and want to use command line to do these steps, that's totally fine too. So our first step is to download the installer. I already have that page open. It's good to just go and verify this link if you're doing it from the command line, so you could copy that link address. But for right now, we're working on Windows, so we'll just click this link to download the latest installer. It doesn't really matter what Python version this base environment has or this base installer has, since we can switch versions pretty easily, but right now it's at Python 3.9. So after we've downloaded that, which might take a little bit longer depending on your internet speed, we're just going to click through this installer, leaving the default settings unless you really have a reason to choose something different. And we're just going to let this run. Might take a few minutes depending on your machine. But after that's all set, then we've actually finished out this first step, and we've done half of this second step. So we've already downloaded it, and now we're running that installer, and then the initialization is going to come next. So the initialization basically just means that whenever you open up a new terminal, so in our case it's going to be PowerShell, whenever we open up a new PowerShell window, Conda will be started for us. It'll set the Python keyword to be running Conda. So to demo the case where we're at right now, if we try and type Python -- version, it tells us Python was not found. It doesn't know what this command is. But once we get all set up, we'll be able to run this command in PowerShell, and it'll be running with our Conda Python install. So now we've completed this, so we can close out of the installer. I'm not going to pop open any of their tips because I prefer to use Conda from PowerShell in the command line, but they do have a GUI tool if you prefer to use that. So to initialize it on Windows, we actually have to open up a different application called the Anaconda Powershell Prompt. So we'll open that up, and we'll type in Conda init PowerShell. So after this has gone through, we can exit out of that and jump back to kind of a normal PowerShell window. So if you're paying close attention to what this looks like, we have a new kind of parentheses with base on the left here of our prompt. That means that Conda is active, which means that hopefully when we write Python version, Python -- version, we get Python 3.9.5. We don't get an error. So we can actually run Python code now. And we can even run one of these little Easter eggs hidden in the code base, which is the antigravity module, which opens up XKCD for you about the magic of Python. So cool. Now we've verified that Python's working, we've initialized Conda, and now we want to show off kind of the power of kind of why we would use Conda to manage our Python versions. So let's make a script that's only going to work with Python 3.10 and then try to run it. So just using the file explorer, I'm going to make a new folder and then call this a Python demo, and then make a py file in here. So we'll call this something like test.py. In Windows, it doesn't like you creating files with different extensions, so you can ignore this warning. If you don't even have that option, make sure you go to View and select File Name Extensions so that you can kind of work with different files and change their extensions. And so we'll open this up with Notepad just because everyone has access to that, and we'll paste in some code from Python 3.10 demo. This is the official Python documentation. And in Python 3.10, they added this match case statement. So we have a function HTTP error, which takes in a status and tries to do a match on this status. So just to kind of show the function, we'll print out calling HTTP error on the integer 400. So now that we have a script that should only work with Python 3.10, let's launch a PowerShell window in this folder. Again, if you're a little more comfortable with the command line, you could just cd into this folder, but for the sake of the demo, we just want to kind of make this more straightforward. So to run this script, we write Python space and the name of the file, so test.py, and here we get a syntax error, an invalid syntax. So this basically is telling us that the code's not going to run, it's not even going to compile, and so we need to change our Python to Python 3.10. So with Conda, we have the create keyword to make a new environment. We have to give it some kind of name. I like to keep these short. And then we can specify which version of Python we want. So we'll set Python equal to 3.10 in this new Py 3.10 environment. And then we have to approve this, so we'll type Y. And it'll do all of the downloads it needs to set up a Conda environment with Python 3.10. And specifically, it has 3.10.0 right now. If you need the most up-to-date Python version, I don't think Conda is going to be the right tool for you because these versions have to be maintained by people who are contributing to their repositories, and so it's not always the cutting edge. But 3.10 is kind of the most up-to-date base version, so it's fine for our purposes. So again, if we just type Python version right now, Python -- version, we get 3.9.5. If we run this conda activate command, then we change our conda environment in the parentheses, and that Python version command changes to Python 3.10, which should suggest to us that this Python test.py is actually going to run now. And now instead of a syntax error, we get bad request, which is what we should be expecting, kind of based on this match statement. So I hope that was a good demo of why Conda is a good tool for installing Python on your local machine and changing versions with Python using those Conda environments. Just as a note, you can still use pip and virtual environments with Conda, and any virtual environment you create is going to be using the Python version that's currently active in Conda. So if I made a virtual environment right now, it'd be with Python 3.10. If I switched to my base environment and then created a virtual environment, we would get with Python 3.9.5.